This is Boat from the Bokok Shamali YouTube channel, and today we are going to do the very first booktube book review type video I've ever done on this channel. Up until this point, I've done a lot of shorts and then one long form video, and most of my content has been speed draws, so like videos where I'm drawing something in my sketchbook or in my art book. I've done a few vegan recipe videos for my series Poor Gross Vegan. And then I've done a few kind of like random political videos, I guess is the best word for it. But I've been wanting to do book review videos ever since I started watching a channel called Frankie's Shelf, which, Frankie, you are a hero and I'm obsessed with you and I love your channel and I love the books you read and I love how you talk about books. So on Frankie's Shelf, Frankie actually... Frankie will spend like an hour. These videos are long, but Frankie will walk you, the viewer, through a book, start, middle, finish, tell you basically the whole thing that happens, and then their opinions about what happens along the way. That was initially my plan. I'm not sure that I'm going to do it that way, and also, why would I? I'm not Frankie. I could never be Frankie. But I am going to just try to talk about these books I just read, and we'll see what happens. So let's jump right into it. I read 3 gay little books over the span of the past week and a half, and they are Several People Are Typing by Kasulke. Sorry, Calvin. Don't know how to say your name. And then 2 books by levithan. We've got Every Day and 2 Boys Kissing. I feel like I have to say that in a voice like 2 boys kissing. Anyway, these were all fabulous reads. I loved each one. I would read them all again. I probably will read at least one of them again. And I can't wait to tell you about how much I enjoyed them. So let's jump into Several People Are Typing by Kasulke. Man, I really should have looked that up. If I had my phone on me, I would just grab it and look up how to say this person's last name, but I don't have my phone nearby, which is rare for me because Lord knows that thing is glued to my hand, but here we are. Anyway, so this was the book with... Well, I would say this and Every Day both had very unique premises, but this one, the format of the way the book was written was certainly the most unique. So I'm going to turn to the first page, so it's not like a major spoiler, and tell you what made the format of this book so unique. So if I can do this. Okay, is it going to zoom in? Kind of. Well, hopefully you get the idea. So this book is written in the format of Slack message logs. If you don't know, Slack is an app that mostly businesses, corporations, companies use to send messages and to have conversations. And I think you can take calls, audio calls, maybe even video calls within Slack. I only use Slack a little bit for this online gig I had for a few months. And I mostly lurked in it. I didn't really message much. But yeah, so the reader, you as the reader, you're reading this. It's basically like someone printed out a whole bunch of chat logs and put them into a physical book, and you are reading them. Which, if you're not familiar with Slack or familiar with like how people communicate in these online or these app spaces, maybe there could be an obstacle to your enjoyment of the book. But I mean, I didn't have any problem with it. I'm also terminally online, so that could have something to do with it. But I got used to the format really quickly. And I found it very enjoyable and also a very quick read. The nature of the book, I mean, basically, there's no detail, there's no scenes, there's no descriptions of how character got from point A to point B. It's just conversations. But for the most part, the characters have very clear and distinct personalities, and you're not really mixing one up with the other. And the characters themselves are talking about what's happening in a way to where you mostly understand the plot. So it's a quick read because there's all of this I don't want to say filler, because I don't think things like descriptions of scenes, I don't think those things are filler, but imagine your favorite book or a book that you enjoyed, and if it was stripped to only dialogue or inner monologue, the book would suddenly become a lot shorter. So let's talk about the plot of the book. Like I said, if I were Frankie, I would tell you everything that happens start to finish. I don't think I'm going to do that. We'll see. So the premise of the book is that Gerald, the protagonist, has mysteriously been transported into the cyberspace of the Slack app. And what I mean by that is one night he was working in an Excel spreadsheet. He was actually using the spreadsheet to help him organize his ideas and research around buying a winter coat. So he had, different columns and different rows for like price of this coat, color of that coat, whatever. And somehow he got sucked into Slack, which now that I'm saying it, I'm like, wait, if he was on an Excel spreadsheet, why would he go into Slack? But whatever, it happens right at the beginning, and the truth is it doesn't really matter how he gets sucked into Slack. He does. And it's never really made clear exactly what did it. So the spreadsheet thing is not like integral to understanding the story. So when, did I say Greg? When Gerald is sucked into the world of Slack, his body stays behind in his desk chair, basically comatose, and then Gerald's soul or spirit or whatever is now this incorporeal entity trapped within Slack. So the very first page is Gerald trying to talk to Slackbot, which is like an AI bot inside Slack that normally users ask simple questions to. So you say help, and Slackbot appears and says, "Hi, I'm Slackbot. I can help you find what you need. Ask me a question using a few simple words." So Gerald is trying to talk to Slackbot, but Slackbot is basically just repeating the same thing over and over and not understanding what Gerald is asking or what Gerald is talking about. And then from that point, the story really gets going, and you as the reader are reading chat logs between the different employees and like a group chat, between private DMs, between just one or two or three employees. You're reading maybe one employee's like private log where they keep like to-do lists or something. Some of the conversations don't have Gerald in them at all, although quite a bit of them do, because you are mostly following his character trajectory. And also, you're reading messages from Slackbot because spoilers. Spoiler alert, by the way. I'm probably not going to go as in-depth as Frankie does, but I am going to tell you at least some things that happen. So if you want to go into these books without spoilers, don't watch this video. Anyway, so as the story continues, Slackbot actually begins to sort of gain a self-awareness and gain sentience and become more than just like a bot with a few pre-programmed responses. So what makes this book gay is that this relationship unfolds between Gerald and his coworker Pradeep, and also between Slackbot and Pradeep, and I guess a little bit between Slackbot and Gerald. So Slackbot is a genderless, formless AI program, but Slackbot does eventually, as it gains sentience, it is able to leave Slack and then inhabit Gerald's body and then move around in the real world piloting Gerald's body. And Gerald, of course, is stuck in Slack watching this unfold in abject horror that his body has now been taken over by this weird computer, I don't want to say demon, but some sort of strange entity. There is this sort of vibe. You're never led to believe that anything magical is happening. This is what I would say. It's a little bit more H.P. Lovecraft Eldritch Abomination coded than it is spooky ghost or like witchcraft coded, right? So you're not seeing scenes of people lighting candles and like summoning the dead, and you're not seeing scenes of like demon possession and like people's eyes rolling back and like rising from their chair. But you do get the impression of like this vast, incomprehensible alien intelligence that exists outside the realm of like human understanding in the form of some of this AI cyberspace stuff. So what makes it gay is, well, let me back up. So Gerald at first tries to tell all of his coworkers and his boss, Steven, I think is his boss's name. He tries to tell them through Slack messages, because inside Slack he can send and receive messages. He tries to tell them, hey, I've been sucked inside Slack. None of them believe him. He's been working from home for a long time, like a lot of them do, and they think he's doing some bit. In fact, they all say, is this some new bit? Like, we know you did improv in college. Is this some improv thing you're doing? Like, whatever it is, it's, you know, it is starting to get old. Like, we get it. You're inside the app or whatever. So some of them just start ignoring him after a while, unless he's talking about work or something relevant. And then some of them maybe take him at face value, but don't think about it too seriously. When he confronts his boss about it, his boss is like, listen, I'm not going to sit here and play these games with you. If you want to work from home the entire time, our company's work from home schedule allows you to do that. Just get your assignments done and get them done well, and, you know, basically don't trouble me with this game you're playing. I just need you to do the work and do it on time. And that actually becomes a major plot point, because once he is mysteriously transported inside the cyberspace world of Slack, Gerald actually becomes like kind of an ideal employee. He's always available. He never needs to eat or sleep. He is churning out work, like high quality, good work, way before deadlines, and he's just on top of it all the time. He becomes such a good employee that his boss is like, hey, this is really working out for you, Mr. Stuck Inside Slack. In fact, why don't you write me an article about how our company's generous work from home policy has enabled you to become the superstar that you have become. Anyway, in this process, the only person that Gerald convinces that he has in fact been sucked into the world of Slack is his coworker Pradeep. And quick sidebar, I looked up how to pronounce that name. I actually got some kind of conflicting answers, but I'm going to say Pradeep and hope that that's close. Also, he has a nickname of Deepu by people that are like, that know him on an affectionate level. Anyway, Gerald's coworker Pradeep, the two of them have an exchange where Gerald convinces Pradeep to go to Gerald's apartment and see that his body is there. And Pradeep finally agrees to go, even though he thinks he's being set up and that it's some weird joke the whole time. But when he gets there, he sees that Gerald's body is exactly where Gerald said it would be, which is basically comatose in front of the computer. So Pradeep really steps up and starts to become less of a coworker, more of a friend, by cleaning Gerald up, helping him use the restroom, forcing protein shakes down his throat like twice a day so that he, you know, is nourished. And the thing is, months go by, and finally Pradeep moves Gerald to his place so that he can kind of be a full-time caretaker, which I thought of this when I was reading it. There could be some angle there of like exploring themes of what it might mean to have a serious disability, or to be elderly, or to have to be the caretaker of someone who needs that type of 24/7 care. So I don't know if Calvin was going for that in this book, but it is something that I think could be explored. I would be interested to hear other people's thoughts on that angle if y'all have read this book. Anyway, so Pradeep is helping keep Gerald's body alive and fairly clean. Gerald is doing his damnedest to get out of Slack, and Slackbot is slowly gaining sentience, and slowly like expressing a desire to get out of Slack and experience the real world in a mortal body that can feel pleasure and touch things and eat things and have sex. And eventually Slackbot somehow leaves Slack and occupies Gerald's body. And then Pradeep has to kind of like I don't even know how to explain it. Show Slackbot how to take care of his new body and how it moves and like what work is like and how to not be weird and off-putting. And all this time, company, like, work is going on it's business as usual. Like, Gerald still has deadlines. He still has to make money to pay for rent. Pradeep still has work to do. And you are not just reading, as a reader, you're not just reading the exchanges between Gerald and Pradeep or between Slackbot and Gerald. You're reading the exchanges between all the members of the company. Some of these exchanges don't even feature Gerald at all. Like, there's all these little subplots. Like, one subplot is that an employee named Trip and a new hire named Beverly, like, the very first day that Trip is supposed to give Beverly the tour of the office, there's a big snowstorm, so virtually everyone is working from home, including Gerald, obviously. So it's just Trip and Bev in the office, and they end up having sex on their boss's desk, and they break it, and they have a chat about that in their private Slack messages, except they're not really that private, because, and they know this, technically their boss can read any of these messages, they just think he chooses not to. And he chooses not to up to a point. And then there's this other subplot where one of the employees named Lydia is also having something vaguely supernatural, vaguely eldritch happening, where she's perpetually haunted by the sounds of howling dogs. And like she mentions the howling in the Slack chats, but everyone thinks she's like joking or thinks it's like a bit. Rob, another coworker, like, seems to be paying attention to her, but he also doesn't take a lot of initiative to figure out, like, Lydia, girl, what are you talking about? Howling? Are you high? What is happening here? Is this a Gerald thing? He's trapped in Slack, and you're hearing the howling of demonic dogs. Like, what is happening? And then sometimes Slackbot, before it leaves cyberspace, it will glitch out and suddenly say some weird things and quote poetry. And then, of course, there's, like, the subplot of the company. I think they're, like, a PR firm. Basically, their job is to work with, like, companies to do branding and to, like, write social media posts and to do, public relations type stuff. So one of the subplots is that they have a client that makes, like, special fancy dog food. Well, the dog food somehow got poisoned or something went wrong and a bunch of dogs died, and so now there's this PR disaster where this firm has to, like, basically do reputation repair to try to prevent this dog food company from going under because of all the angry customers that, you know, had their dogs die. And if you're thinking, oh, is there a connection between that and the howling that Lydia was hearing? The answer is maybe. There's a lot that is not clear in the book, not because of anything like poor writing, but because you only have access, as a reader, you only have access to these chats. So you only know what people are talking about, and when people talk about something, they're only, the conversations are actually very natural. When you're having a conversation with someone, chances are you're not doing an exposition dump every time you see them, where you say, "Hi, my dear friend of 10 years, Kevin, who I met at the bar mitzvah. As you know, this thing happened." Like, people don't talk like that. So you as a reader are kind of left to fill in the gaps in some ways, but that did not detract from my enjoyment at all. Instead, it made it sort of like this mystery where every single sentence from every single chat log probably has some kernel of information. Even if you don't recognize it at the exact time you're reading it, you might recall it later and think, oh, that's why they said that. Anyway, I think I got way off track. What makes it gay is that Pradeep ends up really caring for Gerald as he's trying to help Gerald get out of Slack, and as he's taking care of Gerald's body, and then as he's taking care of Gerald's body after Slackbot possesses it. And you as a reader are made aware that Pradeep is gay pretty fast in the book because of some things he says kind of off the cuff. You're not clear of what Gerald's orientation is, so you'd be forgiven for just assuming heterosexual. But it does come out that that Gerald is bi, and basically through the unfolding of this book and the events in this book, Gerald and Pradeep begin to, like, fall in love. And I think it's because Gerald really sees the lengths to which Pradeep is going to take care of his body and do some pretty, like, not fun things involving, like, adult diapers and stuff to take care of him. And then Pradeep is beginning to learn who Gerald is and connect with him on a level much deeper than when they were just coworkers. And then this really gay kind of... No, we're still going. Sorry, my screensaver went on. Anyway, so there's this one part where Slackbot has possessed Gerald's body. And this part feels kind of ethically weird to me. So I'm still sorting out how I feel about it. But basically, Slackbot gets an increasing desire to experience the world as a human, and Slackbot does eventually get to do that when Slackbot takes over Gerald's body. And as Slackbot is piloting Gerald's body, Slackbot gets to eat for the first time and experience the pleasure of devouring food and then the pain of getting a stomach ache. And Pradeep is trying to protect Gerald's body, but also Pradeep wants Slackbot out of Gerald's body, but also there's like no way of doing that. And Slackbot is kind of like a child. Like, it's not really trying to be evil, it's just trying to live life, basically, and this is one way to do it. And it's never really clear that Slackbot is what was responsible for the, like, beginning of the book, Gerald, being disappeared into Slack. That part's never totally clear. So Slackbot may have just seen an opportunity to get out and took it. But Pradeep is in this weird position where he is still trying to take care of Gerald, trying to make Slackbot blend in with regular human society, because like there's so much going on at this company and they do like their jobs and they don't really want to lose them, and there's like money on the line. So actually that part plot-wise was a little bit fuzzy. Like, why would you, once Gerald got taken over by Slackbot, why would you necessarily want to hide that? Maybe that was something I missed this is a book that I would benefit from rereading, because I feel like on the second read I'd catch all these things I missed on the first. Anyway, to get to the weird part, Slackbot inside Gerald's body wants to experience sex and wants to experience orgasm, and Pradeep has slowly begun to grow very fond of Gerald over the months, and also recognizes that Gerald is an attractive man, and kind of feels like he can't say no to Slackbot's request. I don't know. But then when he tells Gerald about it later, Gerald is mostly cool with it. He's like, wow, well, I wish I had been there and not Slackbot because it sounds hot. So then Pradeep is like, oh, you feel that way about me? Like, that's actually how they make it clear that there's mutual interest, and then they become like an item. But yeah, Slackbot inhabits Gerald's body, at some point wants to experience orgasm. So Gerald is piloted by Slackbot, and Pradeep have sex, gay sex, some of the best kind of sex if you ask me. And apparently Slackbot loves it and then wants it all the time. Now, you are not given a play-by-play of what this sex is like. You're not given any details. It's not like a salacious book. You just read the chat logs where Pradeep is like, hey, Gerald, I need to tell you something that happened with your body last night. And Gerald is like, happened with my body? What are you talking about? And then Pradeep has to be like, well, you know how Slackbot's been wanting to experience like all these different human feelings and traditions. There's one in particular that he seemed really keen to try. And actually, I was pretty keen to try it too with you, except not with you. Yeah, I'm still sorting out my feelings on that. I think the reason it feels icky to me is because there's a weird, there wasn't really consent. And maybe I need to reread this part and get my head straight on exactly what happened and what the play-by-play was. But my understanding of it is that at no point did Gerald tell Pradeep, you may do sexual things with and to my body. And it's not like there's a prior conversation where Pradeep was like, hey, Gerald, Slackbot is wanting to kind of do everything imaginable while it's inhabiting your body. Do we like want to talk about boundaries for what that might look like? Are there foods I shouldn't allow your body to consume? Are there things you don't want your body to do? None of that ever happened. So I just know that like if I had a crush on my coworker and then was responsible for taking care of their comatose body because their consciousness was transported to cyberspace, and then that comatose body got inhabited by a weird alien computer intelligence who wanted to have sex with me, I don't think I would say yes. I think I'd be like, hey, this probably could be a lot of fun because this body is very hot and you are going to want to have sex and sex is fun, but this isn't your body and you don't get to make decisions for this body. At the very least, can we loop Gerald in and just see how he feels about it? So I felt that entire part sort of glossed over the ethical implications. And then just to really tie it up with the bow, Gerald seemed fairly unfazed by it. And if anything was like, okay, well, if we can figure this out, we can actually have sex with me inside my body. So I might reread this later and come up with a part 2, but I will say how sex was handled with Slackbot/Gerald definitely raised some red flags for me. It is possible that I'm overthinking it, but anyway, do I want to spoil the ending? I guess, do I want to be like Frankie? I guess I'll say the book has a happy ending, and it does still leave the reader with a few questions about what exactly happened and what might happen in the future in this world. But it was a hell of a ride. It was funny. If you have ever worked for a company like this or a workplace with this type of like culture, you will find a lot of like biting satirical humor in it, in the way the boss talks to the employees, in the almost like cultish way the employees' lives center around work and center around each other, in all the like nitty-gritty details of employees sleeping with one another and then cheating on one another and then gossiping about each other, and then sometimes like the most mundane thing will happen. Like one of the chat logs is just a chat between an employee and the boss, where the boss is like, you use the company card on sushi and that's too expensive, you need to use the company card on stuff like pizza. And the employee's like, got it. It was really fun. It was really interesting. I liked that there was a gay thing happening, because when I checked these 3 books out, it was because I was really craving stories about gay romance between men. And this helped scratch that itch. Really, my only distinct criticism is that the sex thing between Gerald and Slackbot and Pradeep was kind of weird because of those weird blurry issues of consent. I do wonder how a book like this will age. You know, there will probably come a time in the not so distant future where Slack will have come and gone. So, like, for instance, now in the big year of 2025, would it feel weird to read a book where it was just a printout of DMs from someone's MySpace? I guess not, because there are still books being written in the format of a series of letters, and letters are old as fuck. So I think what will determine if this book stands the test of time is if enough people continue to resonate with it. So we shall see. But I would give it, man, at minimum a B+, maybe even an A. I thought it was funny. I thought it was clever. I thought it was unique. I thought the characterization was done really well. I thought there was actually a little bit of a horror element. Not enough to call it a horror book, but sometimes the weird, nonsensical stuff Slackbot would say, or the subplot about Lydia and the eternal howling, sometimes that was just freaky enough to kind of send a chill down my spine. It was really fun, and I think I will read it again just to see what details I missed and to see if I can get some more answers on sort of what happened in terms of like Gerald's consciousness being transported there, and then, you know, whatever else happened. So that is Several People Are Typing by Calvin Kasulke, or whatever, however you say his name. I think I'm going to take a break right here. I'm still getting used to using this filming setup, and this is actually the second time I tried to film this, because the first time I ran out of disk storage space and had to go in and delete a bunch of shit. So I will talk about the next book, which I think is going to be Two Boys Kissing, in the future, and I will see you then. Alrighty, we're back. Okay, it has been a day since I talked about the book, several people are typing. And tonight I'm going to complete my little mini review of these 3 gay little books. And we are going to close out the video with the other 2 David Levithan books. I sound out of it, sorry. I sound a little discombobulated because I am a little discombobulated. Honestly, today was kind of a draining day. Work was kind of demanding today and lasted longer than it should have. And then I just had several different people in my life all asking me for things. Which on one hand, what a privilege it is to have people in your life that want you, need you, talk to you. But sometimes they want things all in the same day, and it is a day where you just don't have the energy or the wherewithal. I have a friend, a very, very close friend, who just had a sad event happen in her life. And then I have another friend who wants me to travel with him and do quite a bit of work for a very small amount of money. And then I have a family member who has some drama going on, and she wanted to vent about it. And I didn't have the bandwidth. I did the best I could to show up for each of those people, but now I'm just going to talk about these books and get my mind off the chaos of what today was. So let's collect ourselves, get in the present moment, get centered as much as is actually possible. Anyway, we're going to talk about the other 2 books, and these were both the books written by David Levithan. So, I think Frankie or someone in one of the Frankie's Shelf videos comment sections recommended one, maybe both of these books, but my library had both of them, and I can't remember if I said this in the earlier part of the video, but I've been craving romance. Yeah, I do remember talking about it now. And anyway, I knew that these books had some romantic themes in them, some gay romance, which is what I wanted. So we're gonna start with the book Two Boys Kissing, which I enjoyed quite a bit and definitely got me in my feels. And then we'll finish out the video with Every Day, which I think was my fave of these 3. It was such a unique and interesting premise, and I just could not put it down. I started it and finished it in the same afternoon. Well, the same day. It took me a little bit longer than an afternoon to read it. So, let's jump right into talking about the first book. Here's the basic premise of Two Boys Kissing. Immediately the title grabbed me because I'm a boy who likes kissing other boys, and I don't get to see that happen enough in media or in books particularly, but I mean, I also don't see it happen enough in film or TV shows or songs. I mean, the list goes on and on. Although I don't want to be too negative about this, because queer representation over the past decade has just surged so dramatically. We are living in such a special time for there to be as much queer representation as I have seen. And for me to just find these in my local library, no hassle. And Two Boys Kissing, actually both of these are considered teen books. I'm just now noticing the green sticker on the spine, the green teen sticker. I will say, I generally don't go for young adult or for teen books, and that could be a whole video in and of itself why I don't like them, but very simply, a lot of them are pretty formulaic. One, like, chosen, edgy, special, different teenager, like, saves the world by being special and different, and sometimes there's a love triangle in there. I'm not into it. I mean, I'm a grown-ass man, and I want to read books about grown-ass people doing grown-ass things. I don't want to read something that was crafted for a 16 or 17-year-old to read and, like, you know, have their fantasies fulfilled. I really don't want to read a lot of wish fulfillment books unless it's my very specific wish. That being said, these were not like those that I just mentioned. There was not a chosen special edgy different teen saving the world or saving their nation or whatever. In fact, I did not find them formulaic at all. I found them unique and interesting and deep. I did not find them superficial, and I don't think it's because they're queer, although that could have played a role. I think that you can have books about straight romances and straight people having romance that are really captivating and compelling, and I think you can have books where there's queer romance that are fluffy and is substantial. But enough preamble, let's talk about two boys kissing. So the premise is that, how do I describe this? The narrators, plural, of this novel is basically the gay men who died during the AIDS crisis of the 80s. So, yeah, even me just saying that, I feel the energy of this video shift a little bit and get heavy and get sad. And it should. That is heavy and it is sad, you know? One of the things that we talk about as queer people, as queer men in particular, is we're kind of missing this generation of the gay men that could be our elders, that could have passed down knowledge and wisdom and interesting stories and funny tidbits and advice and been comrades and been mentors and been guides, but they were taken from us. They died because AIDS started making the rounds, and not only did people not understand what it was, how it happened, and how it affected the body, but there were political figures like Reagan and conservative evangelical figures who they either treated the AIDS crisis as a joke, like they made jokes about it and thought it was funny. They downplayed the severity of it and thought it wasn't that bad, or it won't ever affect them, you know. It only affected, like, those, you know, nasty homosexuals who deserve it. And that takes me to the next point. A lot of the people in that group, in the far-right Christian evangelical group, they believed that AIDS was a punishment sent by God to punish gay men for their sinful lifestyle. Which, hopefully I don't have to tell you this, that is not what AIDS is. AIDS is caused by a virus. It is a sickness with a specific set of symptoms and a specific set of, like, what's the word? Like, there's a very specific way to diagnose it and to treat it and to prevent it from spreading and to prevent it from really causing any problems. We have come so far in terms of medical advancements. Now, not only can you live with AIDS and not have it affect your life in a meaningful way or your lifespan and be... I don't want to speak as if I'm an expert on it because I'm not a member of that community. But at the same time, I did learn quite a bit about the history of the virus and the treatment of the virus because of some courses and some volunteer work I did in undergrad. What I'm trying to say is AIDS is no longer the death sentence that it used to be by far. And I do know people who are HIV positive, and they, other than taking a specific pill regimen, which usually looks like a pill a day or something fairly tame, their life has not changed in any significant way. Whereas a few decades ago, it was a death sentence. You got AIDS, your life was over as you knew it, your quality of life, your health would deteriorate, and then one day you would die. Wow, okay, this is getting so heavy, and that's not even really what the book is about. I had to go on that tangent, I guess. Anyway, what I was trying to say with that is that we as queer people, and not just queer men, and not just queer people, we as humans are missing out from a wealth of experiences that those men who died during that crisis could have shared with us. We're missing out on advice and wisdom and humor and art and creativity and spirituality, like, and it is sad. And like I was saying, a lot of that blood is on the hands of people like Ronald Reagan, who downplayed this crisis, said it was what they deserved, said it was divine retribution, when none of that was true. It was a medical event that at first affected a specific community and then affected all of humanity. And there's no finger pointing in terms of like whose fault it is that AIDS exists or that it spreads the way it spreads, any more than you can finger point at like polio or, you know, malaria. Like, we live in a world where there are viruses and they spread through certain vectors, and we are the only species on the planet that can develop medical technology to combat or even outright eradicate those viruses. And the fact that we didn't put all hands on deck during the 80s AIDS crisis to do those things and to make the best effort we could to stop the spread of AIDS and to learn as much as we could, that is just a gross failure on the part of humanity, in particular on the part of the people who had the power to do those kinds of things. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the actual book. Anyway, so this book is told Greek chorus style, which I've only read one other book where that happens, and that was a book called The Virgin Suicides, which was fabulous. Or at least I thought so when I read it, and that was about a decade ago. I might feel differently if I reread it now. But in the case of The Virgin Suicides, it was about this family that had like 5, 6, 7, a large number of daughters, and they were all beautiful and mysterious and did everything together, but also kept them to themselves. And so all of the neighborhood boys sort of like admired and lusted after and wondered about this family of girls from afar. And so that book, The Virgin Suicides, it was told from the perspective of the neighborhood boys. So the narrators used the pronouns we and us and always spoke, you know, as a group. So the same thing is happening narrator-wise in Two Boys Kissing, but the narrators in this group are basically the gay and queer men who died during the AIDS crisis and are looking down upon the present day. And it doesn't say they're in heaven. It doesn't say anything about the afterlife. It just, you just know that the narrators are dead, and you know that they have the ability to watch events unfold. And so the chorus, I'll just call them the chorus, they are watching, in particular, several different plot lines unfold with several different characters. So I would say, let's start with like the origin of the title. Two of the characters that the chorus of dead gay men are following is, their names are Craig and Harry, and they're two teenage boys who did date, and now they're just friends, but they are trying to set a Guinness Book World Record for the longest kiss. Because in this book, that record was set by a straight couple, and they want to outdo that record. And it's also a bit of a political statement, like, you know, we're here, we're queer, we're proud, romance comes in many forms and flavors. You don't have to be straight to have cool, special romantic things happen, like a long kiss. And so that's where the title comes from, because the characters of Craig and... Did I say Craig and Harry? It's been a few days since I read this. I might be mixing some names up. But those two boys, they make their plans to have the world's longest kiss, and then they wind up doing it in front of their high school. And they get, at first, one or two people in their friend group is like watching them and being there to like give them bottles of water, which they have to drink very carefully so as to not break the kiss, or like put an umbrella over them if the sun is getting hot. But then some other friends start showing up and live streaming it, so then people are watching online, and then an influencer with 1 billion followers or whatever starts recommending people plug into the Kiss Cam. And then there's like local news reporters coming out, and of course there are hecklers. There are people angry and saying disgusting homophobic things, and like, I can't believe you're doing this at a school, this is disgusting, and you're going to hell, and you're sodomites. So their kiss ends up attracting all of this attention. So that's one of the stories that we're following, or one of the plot lines. Another one is about a boy named Cooper who is in high school. They're all like high school boys. And Cooper is closeted, and he seems very depressed and very lonely, and like he doesn't really have any friends. And he secretly has been messaging boys and men from his own age to like much, much older online through different messaging apps and on his phone. Think stuff like Grindr or like chat rooms. And he's just so desperate to be loved and to be validated. He has these conversations with like dozens of men at the same time. He'll randomly block them. He'll say things to like aggravate them. He'll say things. He just will kind of do anything for their attention and validation, even if it's negative. And that seems to be the main way he like numbs his depression, is by going online and basically kind of like trolling for attention and exchanging pics and like having sexy conversations. Well, he's living this sad life, and some way or another his parents see what's open on his laptop and see the messages, and his dad freaks out, absolutely loses his mind, had no idea that his son was gay, thinks that he is like prostituting himself, like being a sex worker. His mom is no help. She also freaks out, and they have this big, massive fight, and it's really ugly. And Cooper just takes off. He gets his keys. I don't even know if he grabs a backpack, but he takes off. And so his plot line is him basically living out of his car and wasting his days away on his phone in like parking lots or in a Starbucks, still talking to all these random dudes, but his mental health is deteriorating because he feels like he has no home that he can return to. And so each day is even more bleak and more lonely than the day before. And I guess I'll put a trigger warning in real quick. His mental health deteriorates to the point where he starts considering that maybe he doesn't want to be on the mortal plane anymore. So that's a pretty heavy story that you're following. Then there is another storyline following a guy named Tariq, who, speaking of heavy, his story opens up with him being jumped. And he is a black character, and that plays a role in like how his story is told. And it also, he wonders, was I jumped? Actually, I think he says, I wasn't jumped because I was black. I was jumped because I was gay. But then I think he wonders if maybe it was worse that he was black. But like, there's a little bit of a discussion about the intersectionality of being a black person and a queer person, and how you can experience racism for being black and then homophobia for being queer. But also there's like other layers even on top of that, because it seems like some of the guys that jumped him were also black. So that's something that's explored. I will say that plot line to me felt underdeveloped, because I think there's a lot to talk about there, and it feels like we kind of got more attention paid to the other stories. I feel like Tariq got done a little bit dirty, because after the initial jumping where he gets his shit rocked by a group of assholes, all he really does is show up for he's one of the guys live streaming the kiss, and he also does make a really special playlist for the boys to listen to help pass the time while they're kissing. I mean, it's not that he disappears. I just think that his story, he kind of felt like he was relegated to be a side character when he should have been more of a main character. Then we have the plot line of a young couple named Ryan and Avery, where Ryan is an out and proud queer boy and Avery is a trans boy, and the two of them start to have a romance together, and they have a really sweet story. Their plot line, it does have some heavy and sad things happen, but mostly it's really sweet. And I think I'm coming up on the last little story that the chorus of men is like watching unfold. And that is Neil and Peter. Do I want to check really quickly and make sure I'm getting the name right? Yeah, Neil and Peter. And they are probably the most like happy isn't exactly the word, but their story seems to be the most like straightforward and least traumatized. They are a gay couple who are mostly happy together and have some really cute experiences together. I believe it's Neil, who is an Asian American, and his family has been struggling to make peace with his identity as a gay person. So you do get to dive into that a little bit with him. And that has some tense scenes. But mostly that story is him and his boyfriend having a very cute, very gay time together. And all of the stories kind of intersect in different ways. So, for instance, the two boys kissing. Like I said, Tariq winds up doing some social media live streaming stuff there. Ryan and Avery have a conversation about the kiss because they hear about it on the radio during a car drive to like a date or something. Neil and Peter wind up seeing it on the news and having a conversation about it. There's like different ways that the stories intersect. And it was really enjoyable. It was very gay. And what I mean by that is it was so nice to just read a story where the focus was romance and connection and intimacy between men. More specifically between like high school boys. Which, quick sidebar, I don't recall anything inappropriate, anything sexual, anything graphic. I don't even know if there were like swear words, or at least a lot of swear words. It is a book that is able to handle some like kind of heavy topics and describe the world of these teenage boys and their friends and families, but without ever being voyeuristic or salacious. Like, you were not reading this and feeling like you were reading the written version of an episode of Euphoria where a bunch of underage people are having like intimate relations and doing drugs. You're not getting that. It's fairly wholesome as far as that goes. And I wasn't reading this because I wanted to read about kids basically doing anything like that. I just wanted to sort of like let the part of myself that's still a teenage boy who missed out on dating and missed out on romance because I was in the closet for so long, and then when I was out of the closet, it's not like I actually had a very good dating experience then either. So this was a book I was reading really for, I guess you could call it like inner child work, or more specifically inner teen work. But every storyline is following a gay male character or a queer male character and their life and their ups and downs. And it was so refreshing to be immersed in a world like that, because often it's gotten better, but often I'll read books or see shows or what have you where there's a gay character and they have a story and a life, but they are a side character, and you just dip in every so often to kind of check on them, and then boom, back to straighty world. And there's so many forms of media where, just like Two Boys Kissing, you're following lots of different storylines and lots of different characters, and even then, like, one of them is gay. And statistically, that makes sense because most people I know are straight. Queerness, you know, being queer puts you in a minority, sometimes, depending on where you live, a very small minority. But, like, when I'm reading, we can suspend the laws of reality. We don't have to go exactly off what's statistically accurate. Like, I wanted to escape into a world where I could just relate to virtually every character because we have these things in common. I could relate to, there's this part where Ryan has an encounter with some, like, people at his high school that are cruel to him. I can relate to that. There's obviously any of the scenes where a young queer kid is having a horrible experience with his family not understanding his queerness. Unfortunately, I can relate to that very well. Actually, I will say I was pretty lucky. My high school experience, as far as school-wise, was really, really, really good. There's only one or two little things that happened. For the most part, my friends were amazing, and people did not give me any trouble after I came out of the closet. In many ways, I was very affirmed. It was my family that made my life a living hell. And you know, it hasn't all been misery. I have had positive dating experiences with men, and so there was times where I was able to relate to the happy moments. But I highly recommend it, especially if you are a queer man or you are someone who cares about queer men and wants to understand their experience a little bit more. And to kind of circle back to the very beginning of me talking about this book, I thought that the way it was narrated by that group of men looking from beyond somewhere from the afterlife and like watching these stories unfold, that was so beautiful and so tender and so heartbreaking, because they will say things like, we will never taste Fruit Loops again, we will never taste our lover's tongue in a tender kiss again, we will never get mad at traffic again, we did not get the chance to set a world record for the longest kiss, we did not get the chance to experience what it feels like to go to a school dance with a same-sex partner and no one really care because it's just not something worth caring about. And also, when they're observing Cooper, the boy who is kind of having a downward spiral of depression and loneliness, that was really hard. I hate to say it, not to get too vulnerable on the YouTube channel, but I really related to Cooper. I remember what it felt like to be closeted and to feel so alone, and I also remember, unfortunately, what it feels like to be desperate for validation and spending lots of time in those online spaces having random conversations with people you'll never meet, hoping to find connection, a spark, something. And so the men that are narrating the story are like, they're like trying to cry out to Cooper, like, don't give up on life, don't give up even on your mean family, like there still could be hope, like don't let yourself walk down this sad, lonely, small path that only gets smaller and smaller until it's suffocating. Like, you feel their hearts break as they see this young gay kid just circle the drain. So that really spoke to me, because in one way I felt like Cooper because I remember feeling like him, and in the other way I feel I don't know if I call myself a gay elder, being in my 30s, does that qualify me as an elder? To a 15-year-old I might as well be, right? But like, I was able to relate to it because I'd been in Cooper's shoes, but also as someone older than Cooper by like a decade or so, I'm like, no, buddy, things do get better. Maybe not exactly the way you think they will, and it does take time. It's not just this, someone waves a magic gay wand and everything becomes sparkles and sunshine, but things can and do get better, and don't give up. Don't let what you think the world is at 15, like, tell you that that's the only way the world can be. Anyway, two boys kissing, fabulous, exactly what I needed. Honestly, felt a little bit healed after reading it. I would say my big critique is that I felt that Tariq's storyline was kind of underserved and a little bit relegated to the side, away from the storylines that had more of a spotlight, more of a focus. But the writing was gorgeous. It was very easy. Like, I was never mixing up characters. I know that just now I was struggling to make sure I got their names right, but I'm like that with any book. I never was like reading a section thought, wait, who are you talking about? It was very, very crystal clear if I was reading about Cooper and being in his like dark, sad headspace, or if I was reading about Neil and his partner. Yeah, loved it. And because I read it before Every Day, I went into Every Day with high expectations, to be honest, and let me tell you, they were met and then exceeded. This was my favorite of the three. I enjoyed all three, but this one was just really special. I am still thinking about it, and this is what I was most excited to talk about. I am going to very quickly pause and kind of see how I'm doing on time, and it looks like I'm doing great. So I believe I'm going to take a quick break to just like get a sip of water and check my phone, and then we're gonna finish out this video with Every Day by David Levithan. So I will see you in a moment. So we're back. We're back for part 3 of 3, talking about some gay little books I read, and let's just jump right into it. I'm excited to tell you guys about Every Day by David Levithan. So this is the same author that wrote Two Boys Kissing, and it also has quite a bit of queer energy in it, but the main romance of it felt a little bit straight. I'll get to that in a second. You might be thinking, a little bit straight, what does that mean? Well, let me back up. So, Every Day is about a character named A, and I don't even think A introduces themselves as A right in the very beginning. I think the reader understands that later. But A is a person who their entire life, every day that they wake up in possession of someone else's body. So the only constants of this weird condition are that A does age. So when A is like a little baby, every day A is waking up as a different infant. And then when A is a kid, every day A is waking up as a different kid. And then at the point that the reader is reading the book, A is waking up as a different 16-year-old every day. And then the other constant is that A never repeats the same person. After A experiences that person's life for that one day, that's it. It's a new person from then on. And A falls asleep, I think, at midnight exactly, and then sleeps, overnight, and then wakes up as a new person. And it establishes pretty clear there's like no way around that. Like, apparently if A tries to stay awake past midnight, they literally feel themselves leave one body and materialize in another body, and it's like painful and unpleasant, and there's really no way around it. So the book starts with A kind of explaining this situation. And just in case I didn't make it clear, A is genderless and has a personality and a presence, but also every day is kind of existing in this weird tension between who A is as a constant and then the person A has to pretend to be for that day. So let's say that A wakes up as, I don't know, a high school cheerleader. A has access to that cheerleader's memories. A can access is what they say. Access that cheerleader's memories and figure out her schedule. I guess we're saying it's a girl cheerleader. Her schedule, her combination to her lock on her locker, the name of her parents, the food she likes, the origin of like the scar on her forearm. But A can't just A still has to kind of fake it to try to be her for a day. And A is still learning how to try to pretend to be that person. And A does not have access to muscle memory, at least not that I ever could tell. In fact, I think there's a subplot where A explains that one time A woke up as a skier and tried to ski but did not know how to do it and ended up breaking that person's leg in 3 places. And then from that point forward, anytime A wakes up as an athlete of some kind, they basically pretend to be sick for that day so that they don't ruin that person's life, or at least, cause them some trouble for a few months. So in this example, if A wakes up as a cheerleader, A probably isn't going to go to cheer practice and do a standing tuck or whatever, because A would be afraid of hurting that girl's body while they were in control of it. So it is possession, except the person that is being possessed isn't aware of it. They're basically asleep for the whole... If we think of the person's body as a car and A is now in the driver's seat, the person who should be in the driver's seat is passed out in the passenger seat. And when they wake up the next day, they don't really think anything different or weird happened. They have the memories of what happened that day before, but they sort of rationalize everything they did as yeah, I did that. I made that choice. There's this one part where A wakes up as this boy who goes to Starbucks and gets a coffee, and then the next day when someone asks, why did you go to Starbucks yesterday? You never have gone before. That person that was A was just I don't know, I wanted a coffee. They don't clock that they were possessed. Except there is... Well, let me get to that. So, A has more or less to learn to live life this way. and has kind of tried to make the best of it, and has basically a pretty strong moral center. They don't want to ever do in a given day something that's going to really harm the person that they're taking over. They don't want to make that person, like, they don't want to do anything that's going to cause that person a lot of trouble later. For instance, they felt horrible about trying to ski and then breaking their leg, so that's why they don't do anything like that anymore. And they try their best to sort of pretend to be that person and keep their life even keeled and predictable while they're in control of that person for that day. Until A wakes up in the body of a 16-year-old boy named Justin, who has a girlfriend named Rhiannon. And during the day that A is in control of Justin's body, A falls head over heels in love with Rhiannon. A thinks that she's beautiful, describes what she looks like, is also drawn to like her energy and her aura, loves what she has to talk about, can't get enough of her stories. And the thing is, you find out pretty quickly that when A is in control of a given body, it doesn't take A very long to figure out what kind of person they are. So A finds out fairly quickly that Justin's actually kind of a jerk and not super nice, and takes Rhiannon for granted and is kind of just like a teenage asshole. So A, upon falling in love with Rhiannon, also feels like defensive of her and kind of like, why are you with this like shitty dude? So that day, because A is crushed on her so hard so quickly, A actually skips school, which I don't think it really hurts Justin too much, but skips school, convinces Rhiannon to skip, and spends the entire day with her on the beach. And they have these beautiful, meaningful heart-to-hearts, and Rhiannon is used to Justin being kind of a distant jerk. So at first, she's like reluctant and shy and a little bit weirded out that her boyfriend is suddenly being so nice and cool. But then she does open up, and they have this wonderful, beautiful romantic time together. And so I think when I said it's a little bit straight, it's because it is this context in which A and Rhiannon, like with the relationship they have, begins. And so even though A changes gender and identity over and over throughout the book, the stage is set with A in the body of a boy and Rhiannon as a girl. So that's why the romance, even though it doesn't necessarily stay that straight, feels kind of straight because of the way it starts. So A has to get back to Justin's home before midnight, Cinderella style, because when A leaves Justin's body, A would prefer that Justin be in his own bed the way A would want anybody to be in their own bed. A doesn't want to ruin people's lives and have them wake up in a field or whatever. But, like I said, A has fallen in love with Rhiannon. So, I say he, but it's they. A does explain that A doesn't feel like they have a gender. I guess I was saying he because A was in Justin's body. But more accurately, they wake up the next day in the body of another boy. And it's this goody two-shoes kid named Nathan who kind of has no life and has like straight A's and like a very clean room and does all his chores and never does anything fun or wild. But A has woken up in control of Nathan's body, and A is head over heels for Rhiannon, and A found out that there's going to be a party where she and Justin are going to be at that's not too far away. Like, A could get in Nathan's car as Nathan and drive to this party. So A makes that happen by pretending, to be Nathan while in Nathan's body and saying, I'll do these chores, I want to go to a play. And the parents apparently don't question it, but A, while in control of Nathan, does not go to the play. A goes to this party, and as Nathan finds Rhiannon, Justin is off drinking in another room with his friends and more or less ignoring Rhiannon, and she's kind of on her own. So A, as Nathan, strikes up a conversation with her, and at first she's like, I don't know you, but he manages to sort of charm his way into kindling a friendship. And just to make sure there's no trouble and that there's not going to be a fight or something when Justin shows up, A, as Nathan, lies that he's gay, so Rhiannon doesn't need to feel like she's being, unfaithful by hanging out with this other boy at a party, and Justin doesn't need to feel threatened. In fact, upon learning this situation, Justin more or less gives them their blessing to go hang out, and for Nathan to entertain Rhiannon so he can just drink with his friends. And once again, they have a wonderful time. And at this point, Rhiannon has no idea about this A stuff. From her perspective, she had a really cool special out of the ordinary day with her boyfriend, and then the next day met a really cool, kind of forward but nice random gay dude who is dancing with her and having a blast. And so that's going great. Well, as Nathan, A manages to get Rhiannon's email and memorize it, because you can already tell where this is going. A is so in love with Rhiannon that every day A wakes up as a new person, they're going to try to find Rhiannon and be with her. Well, this is where A is kind of selfish, because A does not get Nathan home to Nathan's bed before the clock strikes midnight. And so I think A has to pull over and then fall asleep there in the car and then wake up in some other body. So when Nathan comes to, remember goody two-shoes, boring, straight-laced Nathan, he is actually being pulled over by a cop is there, like, what is going on? Why are you on the side of the road? Do your parents know where you are? How old are you? Do you even have a license? And so Nathan literally believes that he was possessed by a demon. And he has very, very vague, foggy memories of being at a party, but nothing beyond that. So he wonders if he was drugged. His parents are absolutely freaking the fuck out, because from their perspective, their perfect little boy lied to them, did not go to a play, instead went to this party, got the police involved when they found him pulled over by the side of the road. So there's a subplot where Nathan genuinely believes he was possessed by a demon, and it catches the attention of a community of people who also think that they may have been possessed by demons, most of whom are people experiencing a break from reality. But A is kind of paying attention to this and thinks that some of these people might have had similar experiences with entities like A. A doesn't know for sure. And A isn't even that concerned with it at the beginning, because A is more concerned with pursuing Rhiannon. So I'm now going into deep, heavy spoilers. I don't think I'm going to tell the entire book the way Frankie does, but I'm going to tell you some more of it. A, using that email address, gets in touch with Rhiannon and comes clean and is like, listen, you have now had a really special, kind of unusual experience with your boyfriend. And then the day after that, you had a really special experience with what you thought was a random gay guy at a party. But both of those experiences had a common denominator, and it was me. I am something that, wakes up every day in a new person's body, runs their show for that day, and then moves on, not on purpose. It just happens automatically at midnight. And I've fallen in love with you, and even though I'm a different person every day, and sometimes I'm a person who lives hours away from you, I want to spend time with you. And she, of course, doesn't believe him. Or them, So she's like, you're going to have to prove it. Is this a joke? Justin, is this you? Are you doing this? Is this why you're so weird and nice to me the other day? Was it a setup? Well, A does prove it. And I think at this point, when A shows up to Rhiannon again, I think A is a girl. Oh, yeah, there's this one other time where A wakes up as a girl and is able to go to Rhiannon's school and pretend to be a new student and conveniently, bump into Rhiannon and be like, oh, I'm the new girl. I'm not sure where my homeroom is. Could you help me? Which, as I'm saying it, almost sounds kind of predatory, and really that's something worth exploring. There is a bit of a stalker element to this. A is never doing anything predatory or nasty or disturbing to Rhiannon, but there is kind of some blurred lines around knowing about someone but them not knowing the truth about you, and you pretending to be someone else even if you can't exactly help it. But in A's defense, they come clean after the first 3 iterations. So yeah, A is like, remember that day your boyfriend was so cool? Remember that random dude you met at the party who seemed so nice to you? Remember that girl who needed help and you showed her around and y'all seemed to really click? I was actually all 3 of those people, because for each of those days I was in possession of that given person's body. I've fallen in love with you. I want to meet you. I want to spend time with you. I want to be with you. And A does prove it to Rhiannon. And then the story really kicks off. Rhiannon doesn't want to cheat on Justin, but she's also starting to be a little fed up with him, and she's very interested in A just because who wouldn't be interested in someone like that? So, yeah, for the bulk of the middle part of the book, I guess, every day, A wakes up as a new person, and if they can help it, they go and build their day around Rhiannon, and if Rhiannon can help it. It's actually kind of realistic that way, because there are days where A wakes up as someone who cannot skip class, or there's this one part where A wakes up as an underage maid whose entire job all day is going with her sisters and like scrubbing floors in hotels top to bottom, and like there's no way she's getting away from that. Like, and also in this body, like A doesn't speak the language that body speaks, so A can figure out what's happening, but it's like an extra step to sort of translate and decipher. So that day is a wash because A wakes up and is straight to the hotel pretending like they know how to clean. And also that day the body that A inhabits is experiencing menstrual cramps, so A has like a double whammy of like, oh, I don't feel very good, and also I'm like cleaning all day, like, and I'm not seeing, this person I'm in love with. And then there's some days where Rhiannon really can't stop what she's doing to see A, but because they're able to coordinate via email, they're able to spend a lot of days together, and like I said, every time A shows up as a different person. And the energy between them is different based on who A is for that day. So, like, there's this one day where A shows up as a very attractive boy, and Rhiannon is really into it, and I think they have like a sensual moment, and I guess technically it is cheating on Justin at this point, but I'm not going to get too in the weeds on the ethics of that. Yes, I think cheating is wrong, of course, but also these are teenagers, and this is like a fantasy situation, and Rhiannon is like a young girl who's figuring this out with a weird entity that she doesn't fully understand, and the entity doesn't even fully understand itself, so we'll cut some slack there. But then there's a day where A wakes up in the body of someone that is not conventionally attractive, and for that day Rhiannon can't really see past this person that she's perceiving as unattractive, even though she's begun to really be fond of A. And so that day is kind of awkward for them and actually not very romantic. And I'll come back to that in a second because I want to talk about that. And then when A shows up as a girl, there's like, Rhiannon is not queer or bi or gay. She is a straight girl, maybe a little bi-curious, because they do like hold hands when they're both girls, and it seems like they might kiss. I'm not actually 100% sure on that now that I think about it, but overall the energy between them is its most electric and its most romantic when A is a cute boy, or even just an average boy. When A is a girl or when A is not cute, it's not quite the same, which I think is pretty realistic, because, and I don't think that's saying Rhiannon's shallow or that anyone's shallow. That's kind of how humans are, and certainly how teenagers can be. But I mentioned just now that there's a day where A shows up in the body of someone that society does not deem attractive, and that's because for that day, A wakes up in the body of someone who is very, very overweight. I think they say they were like 300 or 400 pounds, as a 16-year-old, and not 300 or 400 pounds of solid muscle, although is that even possible? The point is, this person is just fat, more than fat, obese in the clinical sense. And quick sidebar, I've seen some different discourse around the use of the word fat. For me, it's a descriptor, and if you're hearing that and being like, that's an ugly thing to say to somebody, I think that says more about your view of fat people than it does about me using the word. That's kind of a separate topic. I just wanted to have a little bit of a disclaimer around this vocabulary. Being fat or being thin or being curvy or being non-curvy or being freckled or being, whatever, none of those are value statements about your character. They're just descriptors, and that is how I am using these terms. Always open to conversations about this in the comments or DMs or what have you, but I just wanted to put that out there. Anyway, but I am still making up my mind about how the author, how David Levithan, sort of handled this day. I did not like that being this overweight was led to a day where basically A feels like freakish and unlovable and like treated poorly. Like, were you trying to make a statement about what fat people, or in this case very overweight people, like what that's like? I also feel like, now that I'm thinking about it, that chapter opens up with A saying this person was fat because of laziness, and that is disgusting and makes no sense. I mean, I could have a whole video about the word laziness or the word lazy and like what that means and how it is related to like our capitalistic hustle culture and how we live in a society that says like you're only as valuable as the value you produce. You don't have inherent worth. You're only worthy when you know, spend your time making money for, usually for other people. And people don't get fat because they're lazy. People get fat for all kinds of different reasons. And also you can be lazy and be, you know, skinny as a toothpick. I didn't like that at all. Unless maybe the author was intentionally trying to show that A themselves was a teenager who had some pretty silly ideas about bodies and about laziness. I don't know. There's a lot to explore there. And then at the same time in this chapter, like, Rhiannon, like I said, does not feel attracted to A when he's in this, when they, because it is a fat man, an overweight man. A does not feel attracted to this man that A is, pardon me, Rhiannon does not feel attracted to A while they're in the body of this very overweight young man. And they have like a movie date, and it's awkward, and Rhiannon like pulls her hand away when they were holding hands. And like throughout the day, A feels like people won't look at them, will like shy away. I'm still sort of wrapping my head around what I feel about that chapter, because I think there were some things it was pointing out that were pretty compelling, like what it might mean to move through the world in the body of someone that society says is ugly or undesirable or contemptible. But then the weird laziness thing is just outright like, not the move. But also like, it did really humanize Rhiannon because she's not perfect. No character in this book is presented as like flawless, which I really appreciate. And yeah, I could certainly see a 16-year-old kid in Rhiannon's situation being kind of thrown off when the person they might be falling in love with shows up in this body that they are not mature enough to see as just a body. In other words, like, that's a realistic depiction of what might happen if someone was being honest about where their attraction lies. I don't know, I'm kind of it's getting late and it's also getting hot. I turned off my AC unit to reduce the white noise in this video, and let me tell you, it's starting to get a little toasty. But that was an interesting chapter that I think a little problematic in some ways, but also I'm still thinking about it and talking about it. This is a book I will 100% reread, and when I get to that part in the book, I think I might go into it with a little bit more of a critical lens and see what messages I pull with a reread. But yeah, my first initial pass over that chapter was I felt a revulsion towards the idea that fatness and laziness are intertwined and that fatness is bad or wrong or gross. But then also there's a realistic way in which some people view and treat people who are fat, like what happened with Rhiannon and her attraction like totally dropping. Yeah, so that was a part of the book that certainly gave me a lot to think about. But anyway, the last thing I'll say is that, yeah, the main plot is A falling in love with Rhiannon and trying to spend every day with her, even though every day A is literally a new person. And I realized this as I was describing that chapter where A is inhabiting the body of someone that is treated so differently because of them being considered unattractive. There's also a chapter where A wakes up in the body of someone extremely attractive. In that chapter, A wakes up as, quote, Beyonce, but then A corrects themselves and is like, well, not Beyonce, but a very pretty black girl. This is the second time where I've encountered a black character in a David Levithan book where I kind of feel like the author fumbled a little bit. I won't say full on dropped the ball, but kind of fumbled. Like, there's just... I'm not sure why the super hot model character had to be black, and why that had to be pointed out and really, like, central to that day. Also, as a super hot black girl, to quote the book, that is a day where Rhiannon and Justin go on a date together, where Justin does not know that this beautiful girl is actually A and Rhiannon have been kind of somewhat seeing each other. In fact, it's a test where A wants to prove to Rhiannon what a POS Justin is. And so A thinks, if I'm this smoking hot girl, Justin will make a move on me, be shitty to Rhiannon, and then she won't be able to deny anymore that Justin is shallow and a prick. Which, the fact that A would be this manipulative and literally use a black girl's body to participate in this act of manipulation, the more I'm describing it, the ickier I feel about it. So that's another chapter where, just like the fat chapter, I guess I'll call it, if that doesn't sound callous, or reductive, there's some dynamics happening there that maybe the author should have been a little bit more aware of, and I think a reread could maybe help me tease out a deeper understanding of what was happening in those chapters. I will just say that no matter how you slice it, there's something really icky that speaks to some ugly historical stereotypes of black women being sexualized and degraded and othered. There's something about that comes to mind when I think, okay, the main character of this book is literally using a sexually attractive black young woman's body to be manipulative and to make advances towards a man and to prove a point. Something about that does not sit right with me. So for people that have read this book, if you want to sound off on any of the things I just explored with some of these chapters that I thought were a little bit dubious, please jump in and offer your perspective, because I would be interested to hear it. So anyway, that's the main plot, and then the kind of plot B is that Nathan kid who genuinely believes he was possessed by a demon and whose story is gaining traction in the media. And not only traction, but this mysterious character called the Reverend is claiming that these demonic possessions are happening all the time, and he is like well known, and so he and Nathan are sort of making the rounds with their stories, and they're getting more and more attention on them through the media. And not only that, but Nathan is able to send emails to A, because I get the exact details a little fuzzy, but somehow A, like, in Nathan's body left an email page open or something, and so when Nathan was able to come to and then eventually get back to Nathan's computer, he saw, oh, this isn't my email. Is this the person that possessed me? Anyway, so throughout most of the story, A is, trying to woo Rhiannon basically day after day, body after body, and in the meantime, here and there, A is either answering or ignoring Nathan's increasingly unhinged emails like, who are you? Are you Satan? Why did you do this to me? What's your plan? Are there more of you? And that subplot does come to a pretty dramatic head as well. So I think that's where I'm going to wrap up my review of this book. And let me just segue into sort of my final thoughts and call this video done. God, is this video really going to be an hour and a half? Holy shit. Yes, it is. If not over that. Fuck, I might have to edit it down. We'll see. I didn't want to edit it down. My final thoughts are, I thought the premise was so unique and so compelling and so original. I've never read a book like that. Never have I even heard of a book like that. I think I've run into books where the characters experience interesting changes, sometimes rapid changes, but not quite like this. I think it explores kind of the nature of attraction and the nature of love, and also the nature of teen love, because this is, the way these characters talk about love does feel very teen coded, but I was okay with that. I mean, how can you fall in love with someone on the spot? That's not love, that's a crush. And a lot of times crushes are really just an animal magnetism, and then you have to stick around to see if there's something deeper than animal magnetism that's drawing you to that person, and vice versa. And ultimately, I think the characters do actually have that discussion, but I'll let you discover that on your own time if you choose to read this book. I also think there's a lot of a discussion to be had about what it means to love someone and to see them change. We already know what it's like to love someone and watch them grow older, or watch them, get a new haircut, or get a tattoo, or become pregnant and give birth, or have something happen where perhaps their body changes from like the loss of a limb, or any number of things. We actually know what it's like. But this really takes that idea and cranks it up to the maximum by saying, what if this person you think you know and love is changing so dramatically that every day they're totally different? One day they're a boy, one day they're a girl. One day they're a person of this race, one day they're a person of that race. One day they're so attractive you're drooling over them, and the next day there's someone that you're almost cruel to because you consider them that undesirable. So I think that's a really, really interesting discussion and an interesting idea to explore, and even thinking of it now, like, it's quite compelling. Yeah, highly recommend. I think I sort of already explained my criticisms of it, but my main criticisms are, I think the way it explores race is not only superficial, because it sort of just barely touches on, there's a few days where the character is a race besides like standard issue American white. And then when A is a character that's of a different race, things happen like what I described with the quote Beyonce character, where kind of some weird stereotypes and some uncomfortable approaches happen. And then, like I said, there's a chapter where A wakes up in the body of someone who's like over 300 pounds, and that gave me a lot to think about, and they weren't all thoughts of praise by far. So, a wonderful, if flawed book. I would read it again. I probably will read it again. And I think the last thing I'll say is that the queerness comes because of A themselves being genderless. And as I say that, though, like I said, it was hard to see them as anything besides a boy sometimes, because some of the major romantic events happen while A is in the body of a boy. And I'll be real, I've read so many hetero books and been raised in such a heteronormative world that it was hard not to just let that hetero energy define the relationship in this book, even when A is a girl or A is a trans person. Actually, the queerest times in the book were when A woke up as a queer character. There's this one day where A wakes up as a girl with a girlfriend, and they have such a sweet and healthy and cute relationship. That was one of my favorite chapters, and for whatever reason that day A can't see Rhiannon, I don't think. So mostly A just gets to be this girl in love with another girl, and the other girl is just head over heels, and A even tests the waters a little bit and is like, hey, you love me, I love you, but if I were to be someone suddenly totally different, would you still love me? And the other girl's like, oh, absolutely, I'd love you if your skin was green and you had a male appendage between your legs. Which that in itself maybe could be unpacked, but like mostly it was very sweet. There is also, it seems like, a day where A wakes up as a boy who has a boyfriend. And that one, I think, started off as not a great day, but then A kind of gets his act together and tries to make it a good day for the boy that he is that day. So there is some queerness in there that happens in addition to the inherent queerness of A as a character being, like, a gender, basically. Anyway, I'm starting to feel myself sweat, and it's also getting kind of late. And either I release this video as is, and it's almost, 2 hours long, or I edit it down and it's still like an hour long. We will see, but it has been such a pleasure to talk about these books. Frankie, if you or any of your followers see this, I just want to say thank you. I love love hearing you talk about books. You're so funny and charming, and you inspired me to talk about books and to read more. So, much love. Anyway, you've been watching Boke from the Boke Okchamal YouTube channel. I will see you next time.